Hey everybody, welcome to the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast for Thursday. Today is July 8th. Jeff Erickson here. And my co-host today is Griffin Benger. He is leading the RotoWire Online Championship with the NFBC. Griffin, congrats on the great start. It's not luck, it's good skill. So I won't say, but hey, how you doing?
A lot of good things have had to go right for this to happen, Jeff. I have no illusions.
Of course. And naturally it has to. You have to avoid the whammies. So far so good. We're going to hit up a few news items real quick at the top of the show, and then we'll jump into the secrets of Griffin's success and a whole lot more. So first of all, Clayton Kershaw going on the IL for the Dodgers. They're playing a day game right now. Julio Urias is getting a ton of run support. They're up 6-1 in the seventh, but they're hurting right now. Talk about a team that's had a ton of starting pitching depth, but now Kershaw goes on the IL. They've had two bullpen starts already this week. Looks like they might have another one for Kershaw's turn in the rotation too.
Yeah, I mean, Kershaw, obviously a huge backbone of the Dodgers, and a lot of fantasy teams too, ones that are probably competing against me. So a small part of me is like, oh, well, it's not too bad.
Right.
it's too bad for the Dodgers. I mean, it's Kershaw, man.
Right. And that's the whole thing is like you never root for injuries, but secretly you're like, okay, well, who does this hurt that I'm going against too at the same time? Have you gotten to the point where you're starting to look at other people like in the top 10, see who they have?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was sort of neck and neck with one guy in the standings for a while, and he had a very similar pitching staff, but actually the one difference was that he had Kershaw in particular. So, but then again, of course, I lost Bauer last week to that whole awful situation. But in general, I mean, I've had incredible, good fortune with the injuries, and I think it's really easy to appreciate it when you're playing multiple leagues because you see all the other leagues where you have all these guys go down, and then to see how much. I mean, I don't think of my core 1 through 6 pitchers that any of them have missed a turn in the rotation. Maybe DeGrom, I think maybe missed one turn, but like not really, and maybe it's just a shortened one. Musgrove hasn't missed one. Rodon and Bauer until what happened last week. So a lot of good fortune for sure.
Yeah, that's right. Now with Kershaw, you always think that are they trying to manage him just a little bit? Is this a case of coming down with Dodgeritis? Right. But then there was a note today saying he's going to get an MRI tomorrow. So. Yeah, if that were the case, I don't think they'd be doing that. But it's always around the All-Star break, you tend to get a little suspicious.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right around this time, you hear people that are going to be, taking some time off. You wonder, but I think this sounds like it might be at least a little bit serious.
Right, exactly. Eloy Jimenez is some good news. He's going to be beginning a rehab assignment tomorrow, maybe a little bit earlier than people expected.
Yeah, that's a lot earlier than people expected. I mean, he was dropped in a lot of leagues that I played in early on. So great for him. Great for the White Sox. Obviously, they could use that big bat. I mean, he's incredible when he's on the field.
Absolutely, and and especially when you look at the White Sox outfield right now, where it's either Adam Engel or Billy Hamilton or worse, if that's possible, starting for them in the outfield. They just DFA'd Adam Eaton. They really could use the help in the outfield. They could use that another big bat.
For sure.
Yeah. Has he been picked back up in your leagues?
Oh yeah. And as soon as there was a sort of a whisper, maybe even before it, that he was starting baseball activities, I think everyone was on it for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. Then we'll go across town in Chicago. Also, two new notes here. Chris Bryant and Javi Baez both got banged up yesterday. They finally broke a big losing streak. The Cubs are kind of in an interesting spot because we saw how they traded away Yu Darvish in the offseason for young prospects. They basically were trading away his contract. Both Brian and Javi are going to be gone at the end of the year. Is there a possibility they get dealt?
Yeah, well, I just speaking for Brian's situation. I mean, I think he could use a little bit of a break. I know he's been really scuffling lately, but
right.
I mean, listen, those two big bats are going to draw a lot of attention from anyone that needs it. So yeah, I mean, with the way that the Cubs are going, you think about also, well, I'm having a complete blank on the closer for the Cubs right now. I thought
Craig Kimbrell.
Yeah,
that's right.
For some reason, I thought Ryan Dempster. I'm like, what am I doing here? No, of course, yeah. Kimbrell. I mean, I heard there's some, there's going to be a lot of interest in Kimbrell. I know the Jays could certainly use the bullpen help, so that's something also to consider.
You were just trying to find a Canadian hook there with
I
Dempster,
was,
right?
yeah, exactly.
There you go. But in the news specifically on each player, with Bryant, he's dealing with hamstring tightness. With Javi Baez, it's a sprained thumb. We'll see. I mean, Baez hit 2 homers on Tuesday, so
he's amazing. He
yeah,
just finds a way. It's just like, never getting on base and just incredible fly ball to home run luck. He's just
such a unique player.
Yeah, very, very, very unique player. Yeah.
Yeah. I would be interested to see who trades for him and what. I mean, the free agent market for shortstops this offseason is going to be wild. Story's going to be out there. You're going to see Corey Seager is going to be out there allegedly. So we'll see about that. Marcus Semien will be back out on the market, and he's really done a lot to help his value this year.
Yeah. He's been too good. I wanted to maybe slow down a little bit so we could maybe re-sign him with the Jays, but
right. Now, but the thing is he going to play shortstop again? He's been playing second most this year. And obviously, there's a question, can you go back, across the defensive spectrum back over to shortstop?
I mean, everything that I've heard about Semien, I watch the Jays pretty much every single game. I barely miss an inning, and a lot, all the time they talk about how much teammates love his work ethic and all these sort of things. Just transitioning from position to position, he's just doing everything he can to be the best that he can be. So I think that he can play either position pretty swimmingly, and I think he's the kind of guy that can make that work.
How would you rate the Blue Jays broadcast team compared to some of the others out there?
It's they're good. They're good. I'm so biased. My dad got Buck Martinez to send me like a message for my birthday. So
oh wow, okay.
I always am very careful about being too biased. I mean, I love everything that has to do with the Blue Jays. I will say though, I do find myself in the arena of fantasy completely overcompensating in the other direction. I so infrequently do I draft Jays. I'm in 9 different leagues and I don't have one share of Bo Bichette or Vladimir Guerrero Jr.
I'm similar to you. I've got 18 teams. I'm a Reds fan. I like Jesse Winker and Nick Castellanos. I liked him coming into this season, and I still didn't get him.
What is that? There must be
ridiculous.
Some psychological thing. Yeah.
But hey, I had plenty of shares of Amir Garrett. Lucky me.
Yeah, I got some shares of Semien, luckily, and of course in the NFC. So I found a little bit of it. Yeah.
Well, that's good. How many years have you been playing the NFBC?
This is just my 2nd year. Yeah.
Wow. Oh, dude, that's awesome that you're kicking butt in it.
Yeah.
I don't think so. I think there's probably some analytical mind going on there, but we'll see about that. As I alluded to in the tweet, but I didn't mention at the start of this broadcast, I mean, you are a very accomplished poker player, having made it to the November 9 before, famous for your duel against Will Kassouf. And just your run through the whole tournament. I mean, you got lots of airtime even prior to that, but everybody remembers that, of course, unfortunately.
Yeah. It seems to be my curse. When I blew up in Counter-Strike 2, I had this one line that I said to a player, and it went a bit viral. It got a couple million views on YouTube. And then I do this poker thing, and I'm accomplishing this and that, and going here and there, and then I just have one big blow up against the guy on live TV, and that's the only thing it's just the line. Check your privilege. That people love wanting me to say. I've seen a couple people on the street over the course of my life since then. So it's funny how viral how things work with the viral world that we live in.
Right. That's what's remembered, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the secret to your success. You're leading the RotoWire Online Championship for the NFBC, over 2,000 teams, the 12-team league, 12-team format with the overall contest. You're crushing it right now. And I looked at your roster, very good, strong pitching base, and you obviously went pitching heavy early with DeGrom and Bauer. You also have Musgrove in there. You have over 50 saves already. Were you planning a pitching heavy strategy going into your draft?
Yeah, my intention when I got the 3rd pick was to take DeGrom. I'll say that I did have a bit of a pause because Tatis was available. But there was some rumblings about his shoulder as well, and I was like, hey, what, stick to the plan. My intention sort of on the wrap was hoping that, I think it was at pick 20 or whatever it would have been, to get maybe it was 21st, but to get Giolito or Darvish. Actually, Bauer ended up falling, so it kind of became a slam dunk. I was like, this is too much good value. And then I would say that like my strategy from then on was, I really subscribe to the idea. I think it's naturally that to compete for the overall, you should really be chasing high ceiling players. But I think that really where I deviated a bit from that was that I really wanted to focus on targeting players that have had elite production in a full season before. It's such a grueling 162 game season. I like the idea of finding players, especially with the COVID shortened season, where a lot of people's their idea of players is getting skewed. So that's why I wanted to go after someone like JD Martinez, someone like Joey Gallo, even Eduardo Escobar and Yuli Gurriel with that lineup exposure and that 300 plus potential. So I found myself getting a lot of players like that, and I mean, I'm incredibly, remarkably fortunate that so many of them have popped off. I mean, even Reese Hoskins is looking like a 35 plus homer guy. Castellanos, it's just Semyon. He had that incredible year in 2019, and then people weren't really sure if he could find that in 2021, and he was going around, pick 115. So that's really, I think, what my goal was, and it's obviously really, really worked out.
Yeah, your team name is Kissed by a Rosarito. He's like the one guy that doesn't necessarily fit that the rubric there. When did you get him? Were you targeting him? Was that just like okay, I had this whole like established player thing, but I'm going to make an exception here. How did you approach him?
Yeah, I think that I should take a closer look at it. But if I remember correctly, I was more inclined to want to get someone like an Aaron Judge. But I think it just became one of those things where speed is becoming increasingly harder to find. This is someone that obviously showed a great deal of 5-tool abilities in the shortened time. I wasn't really expecting to find like an upside of first, second round production necessarily. I know some people really, really liked Rosarito coming into the year, but I just I wanted to pair someone like Albies with him where it's like, okay, at worst case, I think these guys are going to run and they're going to be in great lineups. So he didn't really necessarily fit that mold, but I did want some of that heat as well.
Sure.
Rosarito, yeah.
Sure. And I'm a little concerned because he's kind of tapered off a little bit with the bat.
2 weeks, I think. Yeah.
But the bags have kind of saved a lot of his value. But I do worry, with Vidal Brujan, they sent him down today, but I think they're calling him back up tomorrow, if I recall correctly.
I think he'll be back this weekend. Yeah.
I kind of wonder how the playing, that creates a little bit of tension. Margot being out probably saves Rosarito a little bit, but this is a team at the Rays. They keep on coming up with other guys. Josh Lowe's still in the minors too. I'd be like tiny point of concern.
Yeah, I mean, he's not necessarily one of the standout performers so far for me, and someone that I'm necessarily super enthusiastic about going into the second half. But as far as like the team name's concerned, Kissed by Rosarito, I think I probably saw it on Twitter or something like that as a team name, or maybe it was on Team Name Tuesday on Fantasy Baseball Today. The guys over at CBS, and it just, I don't know. Every time even though it's not mine, every time that particular pun, it just kind of makes me smile every time I say it. It just starts singing, and so that's kind of why. It's not because I'm a big Rosarito stan or anything like that. It's just he's on my team, made me laugh. I love the whole team name stuff. I have so many that I submit to those guys over at Frank.
Nice
guys, so it's fun. Yeah.
Nice. I imagine you consume a lot of fantasy baseball content. You mentioned the CBS show. You interacted with Vlad. What's your routine on a given day? Like, how do you go about getting all your information?
So I would say my routine, pretty much ever since I got into fantasy baseball more seriously the last few years, has been Fantasy Baseball Today. Just the daily podcast format. I really like the chemistry between Frank, Scott, and Chris. And they kind of represent kind of these different pillars of the way that they think too, and it's interesting to see how they interact, and they have they catch me up to date. I would say that Fantasy Guru has been a huge tool for me this year. I actually sort of cold messaged someone that I knew played in NFC on Twitter, and I was like, hey, listen, this is only my second year. I'm trying to get into this. Are there any tools that you can recommend? And he said, like, this is the one. And, I instantly got a subscription, and the Fab articles in particular have been incredibly helpful in managing my budget, especially when I'm, competing for such a big prize here in the Open Championship.
And that's done by Vlad, and he's fantastic about that. We've had him on a number of times here. He really knows his stuff. That's for sure. How early did you draft?
I think within a week of the season starting.
Is that by design? Do you ever do any earlier drafts?
I did. So I did a total of 5 NFC drafts, one main, one auction, and then three open championships. And I think it was I think my intention was to try to draft as late as possible, just so the way that news can come out. But it wasn't a deep strategy. I would get antsy and want to do one a couple weeks before, but then I tried to wait and space them out. And yeah, so I think this one was probably one of the ones that was closest to opening day, because there was already the stuff about Tatis's shoulder, and I feel like that was only in the last week or so before the season started.
Sure. Okay, that makes sense. Now, do you draft the same style in all of your teams? Did you try to just mess with your approach a little bit there, or try to alter it here and there to try to have different types of teams, or did you kind of have okay, this is how I want to draft every time you went in?
Yeah, I would say that a higher percentage of my drafts were that sort of like pitcher strategy, of course, based on draft position. But there were others where I think fifth overall I went Soto, and another one I got first overall I just went Acuna. But I will say that the other NFC, I'm in 3 NFC like open championships, and the one of them I went, I think it was Soto, Bellinger, and you can imagine that hasn't been going too well.
Not
the
as
other
well.
one, no, not the other one. I think I drafted 7th overall, and I went Cole Darvish, and I'm in first in that one as well. So
nice.
This is probably radicalizing me into taking this to pitching strategy, because that's where I'm finding a lot of the success. Yeah.
Well, and I've got Cole in a couple places too, and I'm starting to worry about him, and I'm starting to worry about pitching generally. I wonder how the second half is going to play out, and whether that'll change my approach next year.
I think that's a really good point. I think that I'd be curious to see where DeGrom in particular goes next year. I'd have to imagine, within the top three picks, but I think he's finding a way to really separate himself now and sort of create a whole new tier that is
right.
Just him. Obviously, aided by Bieber's injury, but obviously the spin rate stuff is a concern with Cole and a lot of other pitchers. So, yeah, I think it's a really good point. Maybe there's just going to be so many pitchers kind of clumped together around the same tier. I don't see the separation between Cole and guys like Darvish. And so yeah, I think it's going to change. This stuff is quite fluid, right? It is. It does change from year to year.
Right, and we got so many layers of uncertainty. Whether it's the grip enhancement, whether it's the ball itself that I think they messed with that, and that had a big impact at the beginning of the season. I almost think this was kind of a reaction to the results a little bit. It kind of changes the onus on the players versus them changing the ball. And then, of course, we got the collective bargaining agreement that coming up this offseason, whether the rules are going to apply. It's going to be a really interesting year to prepare for next year's drafts.
Yeah, a lot. I think a lot could change. You wonder what they're going to do about the ball, what you're going to do about any sort of sticky stuff, if they're going to allow something, if they're going to create a regulated sort of substance. We'll see, right?
Right, exactly. So you got Brad Hand, you got Will Smith, you have a lot of, and you got Diego Castillo going on there. You have a lot of saves. You have over 50 saves on this team. What's your approach with closures? Do you like getting like 1 in the top 10, 2 in the top 10? How do you want to approach it?
So I'm usually not someone trying to get a closer with sort of within the first 100 picks. I guess I'm really targeting teams that I think are going to do well and that are going to have pretty good job security. And that's how, I found someone like Hand. Smith was a bit of a wild card, but I think we felt pretty comfortable with the rest of the Braves bullpen that was probably going to end up sticking, even though he's a left-handed pitcher. Castillo was very speculative. I got him in a couple of places, and then he sort of emerged as, when we all thought it was going to be a committee, he suddenly was the guy, which was great because I was getting a lot of saves early on. But I think one thing that really ended up being quite nice, just as far as like fab and working that sort of stuff, is that someone dropped Karinchak when Class A was really sort of getting a lot of saves, and it was a tough situation because he wasn't closing at that point. He was doing it sort of like 1.2 innings sort of thing in the 6, 7, 8, whatever. And I just said, what, it's a long season. I'm gonna put a pretty stiff bid, and I think I won him by like $1.
Really?
Yeah. Maybe as much as 2 months ago. And that's been great as well. I mean, he's had his stretches that haven't, been too good, but when he's out in the mound for over the course of a week, he'll get you a lot of strikeouts and the odd saves. So yeah, I've been happy to have acquired him, and that's been able to let me sort of mix and match. Castillo was down for a bit with an injury. I was able to sort of plug those three in. And there was even a period when I thought, I need to catch up a bit in saves, and I threw all four of them out there when I didn't have the matchups that I wanted for a starting pitcher. I mean, I have to say, I don't have much of a network in the fantasy baseball community, so I wasn't really sure what the best strategy in these kind of things is. Maybe it's really not a good idea to have four relievers in a week, but I just kind of use the cerebral approach and just thought I don't like Bassett's matchup this week against Houston, and I'm just gonna fire in these four closers, try to steal some saves here, and yeah, like I said, it's all coming up me so far. It's been really, really incredibly lucky. Yeah,
everything coming up Millhouse. I like it there.
yeah.
I'll say this too. You're going to start to see more people, I think, loading up on relievers in the second half. If for no other reason, I mean, our starting pitching has become far less reliable.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. You're going to be able to get some really good ratios from guys. I'm curious to see if guys like Devin Williams, who have really been pitching a lot better in the last little while, if you're going to see them rostered more, if the starting pitcher pool keeps on, if it still continues to be so hard to put together strong outings. I mean, I've been noticing even just the last few days, just everyone's just getting seemingly banged up. It's not easy out there, and the weather's only going to get warmer, Jeff.
That's true. Traditionally, June to August is when we make our hay offensively, and with all the emphasis on the the grip enhancement of the ball and all that, and the change in the offensive stats, it's you got to compare it versus other gains in June, other gains in July. I mean, that's where we're at right now, and Joe Sheehan always makes this point and drives that home. That weather really dictates a lot of this too. So we'll see what happens with that. Where would you feel like is your biggest weakness if you're trying to protect your lead right now?
Definitely speed, average to an extent. I am rostering Joey Gallo, even though, he's looks like he can just maybe hit 360 home runs in the second half right now. He is, he can be a bit of a drain on batting average. Escobar is hitting around 240, 250. So average is a bit of concern, but just definitely stolen bases in general. I'm very much on the hunt and really keeping my eye out. There's not a bunch out there. I mean, I was sort of desperation rostering Goodrum for a week or two there, just trying to sneak a couple in. I've been just refreshing NFC sometimes, just being like, when is Brujan going to be in here? And of course, they have to sort of call him up to be made available in this format. Duran, I'm definitely going to be considering putting a pretty stiff bid on. So, I think I have a budget of around 250 left, which is, only a quarter budget with half the season left, but I'm sure you're aware, it's 250 is not even that low compared to, I think that, I'm sure this is something you've talked about before on a previous podcast, but our experience last season with the $1,000 fab, I think it's really made the bidding be a little too hectic at this point.
Early on, especially. Yep.
Not a lot of people with money right now. So
the other thing I've noticed too is the 12 teamers. It's kind of random. Sometimes you get some really competitive fab bidding leagues. In one of my 12 teamers, there's one week where only 5 players were picked up, 5, which is just crazy. Now it wasn't a great week for free agents, admittedly, but still 5. And part of that was I think 2 people were already out of money, which is just. They emptied basically the entire chamber early on, but hey,
I will say actually that's something I have noticed with the, kind of gross lead that I have on the rest of my sort of 12 team league in this open championship. I've flirted between 111, 114 roto points for a while now. And that has led, I think, to a lack of interest for some of the teams. I don't think some of them are even really competing or trying that much. So that makes it nicer when these guys get called up or there's someone that it's less people to have to worry about. But, having said that, the team that's in 5th or 6th place, let's say Brujan has a big weekend where he gets 3 steals, and this guy who's in 6th place with $600 who wasn't really paying that much attention is like, oh, I want this guy, and he throws a 3-digit bid on him, I'm going to be in trouble. So there's a lot of things to consider when you're trying to get your guys at this stage, I think.
So you kind of like him to be calm this weekend.
yeah, exactly. That's really good. Yeah, I think it'd be better for me if Bruin doesn't do too much this weekend. Yeah, it's something I thought about.
Yeah, absolutely. This podcast is sponsored by WynnBET. If you are allowed to bet in your locality, please use wynnbet.com. We appreciate them for their sponsorship. We are going to put in a couple ads right here. And now we're back. Thank you for those of us you streaming, you missed those ads, but my guest is Griffin Benjer, and I almost messed up the pronunciation, but I caught myself last second. As alluded to earlier, you have a lot of accomplishments in both esports and in poker. And I've noticed there's a lot of overlap between fantasy and those pursuits. Just gaming in general, gamers going to find other ways to to follow that. And have you found that to be the case where like people you played against a lot also got into fantasy a lot?
Yeah, I think that was actually kind of my my gateway into the fantasy sports realm in general, was just players that I gamed with were starting to do it. I mean, I was a massive Blue Jays fan when I was a kid, during the 92-93 World Series. I was like, about 7, 8, 9 years old or whatever it was. And then there was a period when I got super into gaming that I didn't really watch much of the Jays. I wasn't really into baseball, and I was so into gaming. I mean, to get to that level, I think, around that age anyways, a lot of kids can just be, in those early teen years, be really into gaming in general. But when you're trying to sort of be the best in the world and you start traveling around the world and stuff, it was just really all I did. And then at one point, my buddy invited me, he said, why don't you play this fantasy baseball league? I was like, all right, this was, this must have been 15 years ago or whatever. And I did it, and I was hooked. I was in. Now I do fantasy hockey, and I'm, run a fantasy hockey league and play many leagues every year. And it's awesome. It's great. I love it.
Yeah, that is awesome. And I know like there's like in the DFS community, there's a lot of, poker players that became DFS pros as well, and all that. We had Dale Negron, who's actually been on our hockey podcast a few times. So I know from that side, Paul Bruno knows him. Yeah, so I know he's into that pretty well, but it's kind of cool to see that, and I guess there's overlapping skill sets too, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, finding value where you can, that's certainly a huge one, especially I think in this sort of DFS format. I've never personally got super into the DFS. I tried it for a couple days. I think it's something that I could see myself eventually getting into, but I don't know. I'm enjoying the long grind of this. I think I'm careful about myself because, I've never had a thing with gambling or anything, or an addictive personality that's sort of attached to that. But I know that if I get into something, I'm really going to be doing it. And I know that DFS is one of those things that you're just going to want to do every day. And I'm good with this little NFC dream I have. See how this goes.
That's fantastic. Now you made it to the November 9. You made it to the final table, the main event of the World Series of Poker. I mean, any poker player would just dream of that experience. How was it?
It was, listen, everything on the sort of leading up to getting to the November 9 is like an incredible roller coaster and so exciting, and all the cameras and all that stuff. But I would say that the experience of between making the November 9 and actually competing in it was just a nightmare of emotions. I mean,
really?
It's incredible. Obviously, I was guaranteed $1 million for finishing 9th, and that first place was $8 million. But you just have this 3-month period where you're like, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity, and you need to be consuming as much information as you can about the other players, about what you should be doing. You should be doing all these mock sort of drafts, mock final tables, and all this sort of stuff. You never think you're doing enough. Maybe you think you're doing too much, and now you're deviating it about what makes you stronger. And then also I had the dread of, experiencing that moment with Kasuf as like feeling quite validated in my behavior because of the intense emotions that was happening, and a lot of the stuff off camera, and the sort of abusive behavior that he was doing to a lot of different people, or just making people feel really uncomfortable. And, to just explode on like that on him, I started to realize, I was like, okay, this thing's going to come out. Like, should I have really said like that? Like, how is that going to come off to people? Like, the check your privilege thing. Like, why did I say that? So my friend Sam always says that. And I just threw that line in there. And, it's like you're fighting outside of a bar and you're drunk and you're yelling at someone or something. Like, that's because it's just, everything is just so, intense. And then of course it dropped. And I ended up getting a lot of detractors and a lot of people that, just my Twitter was completely blowing up to a level I can't even, when you go viral like that,
right.
it's really, really intense. I mean, I at first it was kind of funny because I'd be like, hey, check this out. And I'd show my buddy, I'd open my notifications and then I put my phone in and I'd be like, watch this. And we wait 20 seconds and do it again. And the little notification things would say like 25 plus or 100 plus. Like it was
right.
every 30 seconds, So it was, and then it came out, before I was about to play this final table. So now I have this weird global energy of all these people either supporting me or hating me. And it was a really, really intense experience. I obviously I'm super grateful for the money that I won and the exposure. And like, it was a wild ride, but it wasn't easy.
After the World Series, did you find that people played you differently because they saw so much of you? They saw, you had so much exposure. They saw, obviously they saw a lot of hands that you played. Did you find it harder, easier when you're playing, whether it's tournaments or cash games?
I think it's tough. I mean, the hands that you're seeing on TV, they're such a small sample size
right.
of specific situations that I think it's going to be difficult for you to really be able to watch, the hands that they showed me in the World Series and be like, okay, well, this is what he's going to do every time in that situation. Poker is so interesting because it can't really be solved. I mean, there are these solvers now. That's a whole other conversation, but there's so many variables that you can't account for. I will say that, sometimes I'd walk into a poker room and I would see people staring at me because I knew that they recognized me, and some people would come up to me and say something. And I mean, they would always have something nice to say in person, though. No one would be like, "Oh, look, it's the prick" or something.
You don't get those Twitter muscles in person.
No. Everyone is very, very, very nice in person. So it's funny.
So you mentioned to me that you no longer play professionally. Do you play recreationally from time to time still?
Yeah, I mean, there's, online poker is still pretty alive and well in sort of Canada and Europe. Obviously they're trying to get more regulation in the US like it was, 10 plus years ago. So there's still opportunities to play. The odd Sunday I'll play a tournament schedule. That was sort of my normal bread and butter, is playing, a full day schedule where I would play anywhere between 20 plus tournaments in a day through my two, monitors. So I do that every once in a while, but I found that live poker was where I was really finding the most success in the sort of twilight years of my career. And that's just hasn't been possible with the pandemic and everything that's been going on. So live poker is coming back. I'm going to probably come to Vegas in the fall for the World Series that they've now moved from the summer, which would be cool.
Right.
And when there's tournaments here in Canada and maybe in and around the US, I'll definitely be popping in and playing from time to time. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah. We're going to Vegas actually on Sunday. RotoWire does for the All-Star break. We go there every year. And usually they're down to I would say the final three tables usually by the time we usually get there.
Nice.
We're always there for the All-Star break. It's kind of our thing. And so I used to go over the Rio every once in a while.
Awesome.
Check that out and all that.
It's an exciting, it's really, the energy in there is really,
it's amazing.
Palpable. It's so awesome. I mean, it's just like, whew, these guys are playing for a lot of money. It's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. I've never played a series event. I want to do that someday, but I'll play it like Commerce or at the Bike usually. And, Jerry Yang used to play there after he won the World Series, and he'd come down to, he wouldn't play the super high roller tables either. He'd come down to, like the $400 buy-in table or something like that, maybe the 500 to 1500. And, there'd be a line of people wanting to play against him, and for various reasons, both because of his notoriety and also because they saw how he played, right? And it was kind of wild to see that. So I wonder, if you would maybe get more people wanting to take your shot at you, or more people trying to avoid you.
Yeah, I think in general, I have one of the things I think I have a pretty strong table presence. I find that I maybe it kind of becomes a bit of a game for me, and I'm able to have a certain, I'm also a pretty big guy, and when you have that sort of reputation, I mean, I've always told people that people think that I'm way better than I really am, but I use that to my advantage. There is a very psychological part of that. So
Sure.
that's something, if they know who I am, and more times often than not, they buy into the hype, and that makes that really meshes well with my quite aggressive style, where I can just sort of run them over a bit more. Yeah.
Nice. Very nice. Now, you mentioned, though, you're doing a lot of commentating for Poker Stars now.
Yeah. For a while now. It's great.
How did you get into that?
So I actually have a sports broadcasting degree. I went to school at the College of Sports Media, sort of the hopes of one day working in sports. This was right before I got heavily into poker. And yeah, I was able to use that sort of. I had an opportunity to do some commentary work for something called the Global Poker League, which filmed out of Malta. And then sort of a couple of opportunities here and there with the WPT, commentating a final table, and with Poker Stars. And eventually, I was doing enough work for them that I sort of started becoming a regular part of their commentary team. So they have, especially during the pandemic, I mean, I've traveled to Prague and to the Bahamas to do commentary work for them for some of their tournaments. But during this last year and a half, they've had a much bigger sort of digital program.
Sure, of course.
With broadcasting. So the World Cup of Online Poker, the Spring Cup of Online Poker, the Summer Series, all these different ones over the course of the last year and a half, and it's been great. It's really fun. It's on Twitch, and I think YouTube as well. And it's great. We're covering all the big events that are happening during those times. Oftentimes, almost every time, actually, players playing for six figures plus. So it's really great. It's really fun.
Do you find it more difficult to commentate on an online event versus a live event, or what? Tell me more about the differences.
Yeah, sure. I would say that it's not more difficult, but it's definitely more engaging online, simply because you're on camera the whole time, the way they have it.
Sure.
So like you can see, we have the two things here. The table would be right above us. Maybe we'd be a bit smaller. So you're constantly sort of on, and it's quite long days when you're doing it live. The camera is almost always just on the table, and then you're sort of talking over it, and then doing a sort of like a wrap up in between, where you're talking about what just happened at the desk. So definitely the online is more of an intensive thing, but it's nice. It's engaging. It's fun to do. I really I really like my co-hosts a lot. They're good personal friends of mine, and they're great coworkers. And I think it's just fun to look forward to working with them. One of them's a comedian, Joe Stapleton, who's hilarious. He's actually opened for Norm Macdonald a couple times. He's just a riot. So bouncing off him, it's just like you're with your buddies and you're having a good time and talking about poker. So it's fun.
That's fantastic. That's awesome. And you alluded also that you were big into esports, and I know that's we do cover that a little bit here. I know it was Counter-Strike was what you were really into the most.
Yeah. So I was sort of ever since the beginning of Counter-Strike. I don't even know how 25 years ago, probably it was now, or something like that. And yeah, I got really hooked on Counter-Strike. It was the biggest first-person shooter of the sort of original esports boom before it was even a thing. People, maybe people were competing in Street Fighter or something, but it wasn't really becoming a thing. And then, suddenly we were going to Korea and Brazil and all these different places to compete in these different tournaments, and it was a rush. I mean, I was just a kid, but it was the highest level. It was like feeling like an Olympic athlete. They're actually I can't say that. I don't know what it's like to be an Olympic athlete, but we actually had an Olympics of gaming in Singapore, where I represented Canada, and I have
that's amazing.
The track jacket, the Canada track jacket, and we finished third in the Olympics. It was just awesome. It was such a fun experience. Yeah,
that's
but
fantastic.
we weren't making money like they are now. That's the funny thing, is I was maybe 20 years too early making a living from it. Yeah,
it's amazing that's been such a thing for 20 years, and that really remarkable as far as that goes. So we'll see, but I think it's just great. You get to see the world many times over. It sounds like. What's your favorite location that you've traveled to?
Favorite location that I've traveled to. I really love Vienna. It's just the architecture and stuff is just so stunning, so beautiful.
Yeah.
I love Tokyo. I actually didn't go there I went there for a vacation actually twice in the last about 4 years. Once just sort of a couple's trip, and then the couple that we went with loved it so much that they decided to have their wedding there. So Japan was pretty
That's
amazing.
Yeah.
Where else? I mean, yeah, that's those two I think stand out to me.
I did Prague.
Prague and Prague and at Christmas time is when they would always have it. So there's something very like European Christmas about just the big trees and everything. It's amazing.
Nice. We did Prague, Vienna, and Budapest for our honeymoon, and
So you know what
that
I'm
was a
talking
great
about.
trip.
Yeah.
Yeah, Vienna is like this classical old, old money, old architecture, beautiful, really refined.
Medieval, but crisp. Yeah, it's just great.
Yeah, Prague. It was at one point in time was like such a bargain to go there compared to almost every other European country. And I think it's kind of caught up a little bit, but I love how Prague has been untouched by war. When they had change of power, things didn't get destroyed. Whereas Budapest is the exact opposite. Budapest Castle has been probably destroyed like 5 or 6 times.
Wow.
But I really love that trip. I want to go back now that maybe experience it in a little bit of a different way, because we're trying to definitely do it on a little bit of a shoestring. So I'd like to go see it again with a little bit more means. So
do it.
It's awesome. So what's next for you? Are you going to be throwing yourself more and more into fantasy baseball?
Yeah, I mean, this is it's funny, I'm almost just free rolling in my head with this run in the it's still early days. I mean, it's halfway through. It's exciting. I liken it to sort of, being an amateur with the chip lead in the main event on day 4 or something like that. Like anything can really happen. It's been a great deal of luck and I guess good decision making. I will say that the moment's not lost on me. Like I said, I know it is still only halfway there, but I do have a lot of experience playing for big sums of money. Like I'm really going to make sure that I make the best decisions as possible, and to give me a chance to win, I'm not going to be complacent on it. And my intention would be, if I can somehow, going forward, find a place for myself in the fantasy baseball community. I mean, I feel very comfortable talking about baseball. I love it so much. So yeah, that's definitely something that I would look into.
I think I would listen. So I hope that happens. Tell me more about your Jays. What do they need to do down the stretch? Are they going to make any big moves?
Yeah, I mean, thank goodness they've actually got a little bit of help on the relief pitcher end. I mean, they got Simber, who I wasn't sure what to expect, but I don't know if you watched this guy pitch. He's like sandpaper. It's working out pretty well so far. Yeah, they need another arm. They need another reliever. I really like the way that we've kind of fuddled into this really great pitching staff. I mean, Ryu's obviously been struggling a bit lately, but Manoah's looked pretty legit. Robbie Ray is, you might even say, having the best season of his career. Stripling stopped tipping his pitches apparently, and now he's just like, what has he had, like a 2.5 ERA probably in the last God knows how many starts. Matz, I'm not a huge fan of, but it seems like we have a staff that at least can compete, which is not something that we thought that was going to be a really big problem. Manoah was just this little blip of a dream we had with 10 strikeouts in those 5 innings or whatever in spring training. And so it's exciting. The pitching staff is exciting. I think that I think we'd be great if we got another left-handed bat. Maybe I'm getting a bit too greedy asking for another bat for our lineup, but if we could get someone like Joey Gallo, that would be pretty nice. I mean,
might be available.
Shoot for the stars. Yeah.
Right.
But so I think that the management wants to go for it, and they finally, started to get some of those relief pitchers that we need. And I think there's a chance if we get a left-handed bat, it would be really nice. I heard rumblings, actually. I don't know if you heard this, Jeff, about, my buddy just messaged me. There was rumblings about maybe Nelson Cruz might be on the move to either, I think they said the Jays, the Athletics, pardon me. That was just a rumor that my friend told me about. So I don't know. Maybe we're really trying to get another big bat.
I don't see the fit for Cruz, just because they're so right-handed to begin with.
Yeah, maybe sending back like Lourdes Gurriel or something, but I don't know. It's we'll see. It's a really fun team to watch, though. I mean, it's hard to even to miss a game. It's so exciting, and I obviously lament the fact that I didn't get any shares of Bo or Vlad, but it's still awesome to watch.
Yeah, it is, and they've gotten so little out of Springer so far, and they're still where they're at, and it's just too bad they can't play in Toronto at all. And it looks like, from what I saw today on Twitter, looks like that's not happening anytime soon either.
I didn't hear more news about it. I heard that we were hoping sort of by the end of the month for, or not. I heard something about like an August 1st sort of 7-game homestand was a hope to get to that they probably wouldn't. And what did you hear? What were the
Well,
rumors on that?
it was, the funny thing is, it was a take that wasn't directly addressing the Jays. I think someone was asked about tourists, the unvaccinated tourists coming over, and he's like, "No, that's not happening anytime soon." And obviously, there's a lot of ball players that aren't vaccinated, so I think that was the inference drawn from that.
Oh, wow. I didn't even consider that that's the biggest roadblock. Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and
Oh, so
I mean,
I don't even know if it could happen this season then with that.
Unless there's some sort of hyper quarantine. I mean, they were able to pull it off for the Stanley Cup Finals, obviously. So, and for the Western Conference Finals. So, I don't know. Maybe for sports they'll have that exemption that they didn't grant earlier. Maybe that'll be what they can go, the route they'll go with there. But we'll see. But it would be nice for Toronto fans to actually see them in person. Just because they're such a fun team.
Amazing memories from the Rogers Center. Did they change the name again? It's anyways. Yeah. It's the Sky Dome to me. Okay, it's
right. No, I'm with you on that. I
like,
fully endorse that.
It's the Sky Dome. Yeah.
I don't even know what to call San Francisco's park now. I mean, it changed like 3 or 4 times, and that's a shame because it's a beautiful park too.
Yeah.
But, well, hey,
have you ever gone to a game like just by yourself to watch a sort of a fantasy player that you really like or a fantasy team?
So I used to live 4 blocks from Wrigley. So when I was in law school and a couple of years thereafter, I'd go and walk to a game. If I couldn't find anyone, I'd still go. And sometimes it'd be for fantasy. Sometimes it's just I love being at a ball game. You know,
so I did that. Yeah, I did that for the first time. Like I think 2 years ago when Meadows broke out with that 36 homer season.
Yeah,
and he started off really hot, and I just went to the game, and I couldn't find anyone to go, so I just went and I got a ticket right behind home plate, and he hit 2 home runs that game, including one into the 500 deck. It's just like, oh man,
it was meant to be. You were supposed to be there.
yeah. And then I went at the end of the game. He was doing an interview, and I went to the top of the dugout, and I was like, Austin, I came here just to see you, and he goes,
yeah,
thumbs up.
That's amazing.
So I miss doing stuff like that. You know, just going to watch baseball. It's can't happen for me here in Montreal right now. That's for sure.
Oh, that's where. So you're in Montreal. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
For some reason, I thought you were in Toronto.
Well, I'm from Toronto, yeah, but I've lived here the last couple of years. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'm actually going to my first game of the year, going to a Dodger game on Saturday night with the family.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, that's looking forward to that.
Who's pitching?
Hey, what's that?
Who's pitching?
That's a good question. I know they're facing Arizona. I didn't do it for the matchup. I just went because the kids wanted Dodger dogs and all that, and I actually can, going to, it's funny, family going to a game versus like going either by myself or they're like Vlad and my buddy Scott Jenstad. It's a little bit different, but
doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter who's pitching, but it is Bueller. So,
beautiful.
Yeah. Against Caleb Smith. So, nice. Not bad at all. Looking forward to it. Hey, thank you so much for coming on today. Really appreciate it. I've learned a lot, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what you do for the second half here.
Great. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun. Great.
You bet. So check out Kiss by Rosarito. You're checking the online standings and root Griffin on. Coming up tomorrow, we got 2-star starters with Todd and Clay. I want to thank WinBet Sports for sponsoring us. If you're allowed to bet in your locality, please use WinBet. Have a great day. Thanks for listening.